Good afternoon and welcome to episode 18 of the Jacksonian. As I have with me is Sonny Verma, the host of Big Banter's Illinicast, where we are going over the 2023 Illinois football season and also our take on Illinois Northwestern, plus many more topics on today's show. It's going to be a fun one. How you doing this afternoon, Sonny?
I'm doing good, Jackson. Thank you so much for having me on. You did such a great job co-hosting with me on the Illini cast a little while back. I got a lot to live up to.
It's start with me, man. You're pretty awesome, man. I'll tell you what. Would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Sonny Verma. As Jackson was so kind enough to say, I co-host a podcast called the Illini Cast. We released a couple episodes a week. You can find us on YouTube at Illini Cast, and you can find us on all the major podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. Also, you can also follow me at the Sunny V. That's where I kind of have more general sports takes. And yeah, this should be a good time.
Well, you can most definitely check out Sonny V on Twitter, Instagram, on Threads, where he gives some of his most fantastic takes on Illinois football and basketball and so on and so forth. And well, might as well get this one out the way. What was your take on the Illinois Northwestern matchup? What went wrong for Illinois?
It was what went wrong, then what went right, what went wrong. It was simply a game where it was a microcosm of our entire season. We scored 40, mid 40s, but then we had 3 turnovers. It looked like we had taken control of the game, and it was 31-28. And finally, for the first time, we had forced a 3-and-out. Northwestern punts it to us. Isaiah Williams fumbles the ball. Northwestern comes back. They score a touchdown. Very next play, in the very next Northwestern drive, they kick off to us, and Kanari Wilcher, an outstanding freshman returner, he fumbles the ball. They score again, and all of a sudden, it was just putting Illinois in a very deep hole where Illinois is a decently talented team, but a team that is less talented but doesn't make mistakes, a la someone like Northwestern, can take advantage of that, and that's exactly what we saw. It was a okay played game by Illinois, but just too many mistakes, and we're just not good enough to overcome that many mistakes.
Well, unfortunately, you guys don't have the APR to get into a bowl game.
Yeah, I saw that Minnesota got that last spot, I guess.
Yeah, it's just kind of like you guys beat Minnesota, but they got the bowl bid. How's that feel?
I mean, it's unfortunate, but again, it's one of those where there's a couple different games in this season that we could have taken care of business. We're up 18 points against Wisconsin in the fourth quarter, and we let that game slip away. There's no way we should let a Purdue team playing the way that they are score 44 points against us, and we lost that game early in the season. So it's unfortunate, and of course we would love to go to a bowl game, but at this point, let's just be honest, we didn't deserve it. And next year we just got to stay focused and really keep that in mind, get to that 6 wins, because the Big Ten's going to get a little bit more tougher moving forward.
Well, I mean, the only way to go is up, and there is a bright side for you guys. You did beat Toledo in week 1, so I mean, little did anybody know that was going to be a big win.
Actually, I knew that. So, a lot of people were kind of down on that win, saying, it shouldn't have come to, a last drive. Let's be honest, it was somewhat of a miraculous play between Altmaier and our wide receiver, Casey Washington. But I was looking at Toledo, like when I was kind of game planning and previewing them before the game. I said on our review show, that, this is a team that could absolutely win 10 or 11 games. And I said that I felt like the win would look a lot better once the season was over than it looked at the time. And this is one of the very few predictions that I got right, because as we both know, Toledo swept the rest of the season, and they're at what 11-1, I think, right now.
Yep, they're
And
11-1, and they're playing in the MAC title game against Miami, Ohio,
mhm.
Saturday.
Yeah, so I mean, again, at the time, it didn't look all that impressive, but I think at the end of the season, when you kind of look at the big picture, it was a pretty good win.
Yeah, that was a tremendous win right there. I mean, y'all had a pretty big non-con schedule. Y'all had Toledo, y'all had Kansas and Florida Atlantic, which I said in July, and Noah made a call in on the Voice of College Football around July for the Big Ten Media Days, and I told people that, look, I suspect Illinois' non-con schedule is pretty tough. I mean, Florida Atlantic may look easy, but this is Tom Herman's first year, and he's great as an underdog.
It's tough. It's one of those things where I've joked around about this on other shows that if you're an AD who has a struggling college football program, the best thing you can do is hire Illinois for your out of conference schedule, because we scheduled this Kansas game like 4 or 5 years ago when they were the worst team in college football, and all of a sudden when it comes time to actually play these games, they're winning 6, 7 games. They're going to bowl games. We signed a series with Duke 3 years ago, and we're supposed to start playing them in a couple of years. And now all of a sudden they're winning 6 and 7 games every single year. Games that Illinois were thinking were going to be cupcakes back in the day. The Kansases, the Dukes. Now, all of a sudden they're teams that are going to bowl games every year, and we'll see how Duke obviously rebounds now with Mike Elko moving on to Texas A&M. But I don't know how you feel about this, Jackson, but I mean, you're let's be honest, you're the team of your choice is on slightly higher ground than mine. But so from my perspective, when I'm Illinois, if I were them, I would try to buy out pretty much every Power 5 out of conference game moving forward. I know it's sad. We have a big rivalry that's going to start back up with Missouri soon. But for a program like Illinois, getting to 6 wins is incredibly important. We need to have like that kind of set as a baseline instead of having lost to, Kansas and pretty much being embarrassed on ESPN TV. Like that game wasn't very close. Having a cupcake there, a Central Michigan there, and having three wins from our out of conference schedule, we're talking bowl game already. And so I just think, in college basketball, it's different. College basketball, you want a tough out of conference schedule. You want to get yourself prepared for the grind that is March. But I think college football, there's so few games that there's just a limited amount of mistakes you can make. And so for me, for a program like Illinois, I just think it makes more sense to try to make it very cupcake heavy. Just try to get your team ready for the actual Big Ten season and have those 3 wins locked away so that once conference schedule starts, all you need to do is win 3.
Here's an idea: schedule Indiana as a non-conference game. That'll be a good win right there.
By the time we schedule them, like they would turn into a 7, 8 win team. That's what happens with everyone that we schedule in advance. That's the
Oh
problem.
yeah, it's like Charlie Brown, pitching. He's just like boop, boop.
We just watched that with my kids the other day, the Thanksgiving episode. Yeah, it's not easy, but I think we're on the up and up overall trajectory, unlike most or some of the Illinois fans.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that Brett Bielema's done a tremendous job over at Illinois, and I mean, some of the naysayers, they're like, "Oh, he had a bad year," but I mean, what's your take when you hear that?
I mean, I think it was a somewhat disappointing year only because of how quickly we turned things around in year 2 last year. At one point we were 7-1. We obviously fumbled it a little bit at the end and finished the season, I believe, 8-5. But the bottom line is Brett Bielema in his 3 years at Illinois has won 18 games. Illinois, the previous eight years before Brett Bielema got there, had won 18 games. It's one of those where I think people just get a little spoiled and are a little too aggressive and not kind of respecting what Illinois is kind of as a football program right now, that it needs to build a higher floor before it can reach winning trying to win 9, 10, 11 games every single year. Yeah, did Brett make some mistakes this year? I absolutely think he did. I think if he was on this show and injected with truth serum, he'd also admit that he did. But that's just going to happen. I mean, what coach in the country doesn't make mistakes? You're talking about maybe 5 or 6 of the top coaches in the country, and even if we had a discussion with their fans, they could point out 1 or 2 things that, oh, I wish so and so did this, I wish so and so did that a little bit more, and those are the top 5 coaches in the country. So an unfortunate year, but the way I put it is, if Illinois' floor this is supposed to be a rebuilding year. Obviously, we lost a lot of talent to the NFL. We lost 3 picks in the top 70 in our secondary, all went to the NFL. So this was kind of a semi-rebuilding year. And if in a semi-rebuilding year we win 5 games, I'm okay with that, because under the previous couple regimes, if we won 5 games, period, I would have been happy. So I think it's just, some of our fans being a little overly aggressive on how quickly we need to be like a very good football program, and not recognizing that baby steps are needed sometimes. And, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I always hate it when people get upset about Bielma because, I mean, it could be worse. At least it wasn't like 2011 where you started 6-0, then finished the regular season at 0-6. I mean, that's got to be dreadful.
I mean, that's got to be dreadful. But even like, I think maybe 2017 or 2018, we lost 63-0 to Iowa.
Yeah, that
Like
was in 2018.
2018. Like, now, this past just a couple weeks ago, we took Iowa, a team that's 10-2, to the brink in Kinnick Stadium in the dark. And it's one of those, like, our program is levels beyond what we used to be a couple years ago, and I think that's all we need to just trust Brett to kind of build relationships in the city, get his own guys, and obviously right now he's kind of coaching more of Lovey's guys are still the upperclassmen. Next year will be the first year where, for the most part, our best players are going to be the Brett guys. And then if we struggle next year, if we win 3 games next year, 4 games next year, and the trajectory no longer looks up, okay, I'm open for a conversation. But right now, again, 18 wins in 3 seasons for an Illinois football program, I'll take that anytime.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a shame that the Lovey Smith hire didn't pan out because, like, in March 2016, I was like, holy cow, it's going to get exciting over in Champaign, Illinois. But then y'all didn't even get a winning record with Lovey. Things
I
didn't
just,
work out, I guess. But
yeah, I think a lot of people were excited, but I think at some point his defense just became a little outdated. He was unwilling to adjust. And what it came down to was recruiting. He just stopped recruiting. If you take a look at the top 25 players in Illinois high schoolers in his last 2 seasons, I think he only got one to commit to Illinois, the flagship program in the state. When Brett Bielema was hired, a prominent high school coach in Northern Illinois was interviewed, and they said that Lovey hadn't stepped foot on campus in 3 years. And that's talking about a good high school program in Illinois, in your backyard. He just stopped recruiting. At one point, I'm a Bears fan too, which I'm sure we'll get to later. So it's funny. I have like such a Jekyll and Hyde opinion of Lovey, because I think he's the best Bears coach of in my existence. I was a little young for Ditka, but he's clearly the worst coach in my opinion in the Illinois era. Just because me hearing after the fact, it seemed like he was kind of content on collecting paychecks for retirement.
well, and I got a feeling that neither one of us were even a thought when George Hallis was coaching the Bears.
No, not at all. That's a long ways back. Not that old.
Oh man, because just like, tell us the stories about George Hallis. Well, when I was a little boy, I saw the George Hallis Vince Lombardi game. I mean that.
Yeah, no, it's kind of cool though for me just to have George Hallis and Red Grange. Basically one of the big initial influences of the NFL. originate from Illinois, and they all have the same colors, the blue and orange colors, as you can see behind me. So that kind of connection is pretty cool.
That is pretty awesome. Which funny thing, we're getting to the Bears. Last night they won by 4 field goals. They got 4 field goals. They didn't get a single touchdown or nothing against the Vikings. How do you feel about the win over the Vikings? Like, and win's
I
a
mean,
win, right?
exactly right. A win is a win. I'm still in the boat where I know we're rebuilding, so I just like to see us be competitive. And if at the end of the game we lose, I'm kind of okay with it, just because obviously we already have what should be a very high draft pick from Carolina, but we also have our own, which could have kind of solidified itself at around the 3 range, but now I think we're in the 4 or 5 range. But there's like a half dozen teams that have 4 wins this season, so it's going to be kind of be fighting for that spot. But like, I would love the opportunity for the Bears to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he would look so good in blue and orange. So for me, having our pick be a little bit higher, closer to 2 and 3, to have a chance to draft him would have been amazing. But a win is a win. Sometimes you don't want a team to lose all the time, because a certain culture starts developing, and you know, we couldn't score a touchdown. Justin Fields, I thought, had a pretty okay, above average game. But yeah, I mean, Minnesota's just their quarterback had his Cinderella story kind of came to a halt last night. He played pretty awful, but he was unlucky too, because there was a lot of deflections, which just ended up in the hands of Chicago Bears defensive backs.
Yeah, I mean the Bears, they just need to get some weapons for Justin. And I will say, if there's any coaching staff decisions they gotta make, hopefully it's better than the Panthers, where like the players, they didn't even know about it until they looked on their phones. I mean, the fact that you or I know more what's going on with the Panthers than the players and the coaches in that organization, that's incompetency. David Tepper, what an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting roasted too.
He should be.
I don't know. He's just he just seems like he's a fan who was just given a little toy, and he's not really running it like a businessman kind of should. Yeah, I read about that too. How the players are finding out via Twitter, this and that, and I'm sure you heard the story that the coaching staff and the management actually had wanted to draft Stroud, and he overrode that, and he wanted Bryce Young, so they drafted Bryce Young, and now you see C.J. Stroud, being one of the better incoming rookie quarterbacks in a long time, breaking a whole bunch of records. So it's they're in trouble over there in Carolina, I think.
They're going to have a long play outcome. As long as they have that owner Tepper, how it's going to be. I feel bad for Frank Wright because, I mean, he not only got fired by David Tapper, but he got fired by that drunk, incompetent idiot Jim Irsay, which I got a feeling Irsay was like about to pass out from drinking too much when firing Frank Wright. Just be like, oh, you're going to get that Jeff Saturday guy.
I feel sorry for him as a professional, but now I also saw a tweet earlier that he's now collecting paychecks from 2 teams to not coach for them. He's still collecting paychecks from the Colts, and now obviously he's going to be collecting paychecks from the Panthers. So
$25 million.
yeah, that's a
Yes.
lot of money. So that affords a lot of beach time down in the Caribbean somewhere. So I think I'm gonna hold back feeling too bad for him.
That's true. Because it's like, I want to see Frank Wright get a third chance as an NFL coach. But on the other hand, now that you mention, I'm like, I hope he learns how to invest wisely. That's all he's got to do.
Yeah, he's got generational money. But I agree with you. I think he's, compared to the other coaches in the NFL, I think he's definitely one of the 32 best head coaches. So I would be shocked if he didn't get an opportunity again in the future. But I think he's got enough money in the bank now, or at least coming to the bank, that if I were him, if I was reached out to for an opportunity, I would want to do a complete background check about the entire situation for any football team. I would want to know about the owner. I would want to know about the fan base, all that. He should pick his next job as opposed to his next job picking him.
Just don't go to the Commanders. Horrible situation.
They're gonna have an opening though. Sounds like.
They couldn't pay me in. But what do you think about the rest of the NFC? What do you think's going to happen over?
You know, as long as it's not the Packers, it's fine. Um, it's hard. Like I know technically they're rivals, but it's hard for me to, especially with the Bears being in their situation, to root against the Lions. Like how can you root against the Lions? A team which would be in the running for the worst organization, not just in the NFL, in almost all of sports. I think that they've gone to like one playoff game in our lifetime.
They haven't
It's
even won an NFL title of any kind since 1957, and that was in the days of the NFL championship. Curse of
right.
Bobby Lane still lingers on.
So it's one of those. I hope they do well. We had them at the ropes too in the second half of our game 2 weeks ago. They came back and won, which again for me it's fine. We get a higher draft pick, and the Lions get a much needed win for themselves. But I like their coach. His name escapes me right now. I remember seeing he was in the running for the Texas A&M job. Campbell, Dan
Dan
Campbell.
Campbell.
Yeah.
I called
Um,
him Matt Campbell by accident. Twitter the other.
yeah, no, that guy, he might have some regrets in his life. But Dan Campbell, like when you see him in interviews right now, he seems just like a football guy. And when they were struggling the last couple of years, you're wondering if, oh, here they go again, going to fire him, bring in a new guy. But he seems to have turned things around. So, and it's just you can't help but be happy for that organization just because it's the Lions. Come on.
I hope they win the NFL. Honestly, I kind of want to see that. Want to see them get to their first ever Super Bowl in team history. That would be
It would
cool.
it would be fun. It'd be a cool story for Jared Goff too. Who was just kind of unloaded by the Rams. To get Matthew Stafford, and obviously the trade worked out for the Rams. They won the Super Bowl, but it would be cool for Jared Goff to have his own feather in his cap, saying leading the Detroit Lions to a Super Bowl on his end too.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty happy to see Matthew Stafford finally able to win a playoff game in I was like, oh my God, you have no idea how long I've waited for you to win it all.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow's like always been one of my favorite players. Like I really enjoyed watching him in college. So he's probably my favorite non-Bulls or Bears fan player in the NFL. So like it would have been cool to see him win the Super Bowl so early in his career, but he's got plenty of time, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be fun seeing what happens with the rest of the NFL. I can't wait to see what happens with the Bears in the 2024. I want to see them get a draft steal running back. Get that guy from Kentucky. I wanted to say they could get Ollie Gordon, but Ollie Gordon's going to be a junior next year. So he's going to be a junior dog over at Oklahoma State. That's my
Yeah,
nickname for the juniors from junior.
I like it. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We got what 5 or 6 games left, so I think basically they're going to see how Fields plays and decide whether we need to, kind of reset the quarterback clock and draft a quarterback. Whether it's Caleb Williams or Drake May, or do what we did last year. And if we do end up with the number one spot, trade down a little bit. I love the idea of getting what's his name, like that Penn State offensive lineman, Penne, I forget his name. And we do need a little defensive help, so this might be my bias showing, but like, all right, if we trade down to like the 10th pick, I would love a guy like Johnny Newton. A guy who is a little small, but I think he causes a lot of havoc. I've watched almost every snap of his football career, and I think he's going to be a very good NFL football player. So, and then we can tack on an extra good player out of there. Last year we got DJ Moore from Carolina, who I'm watching this year is the best wide receiver I've ever seen in a Bears uniform. So I don't know. I'm in the boat of keeping Fields and using those assets to build a better team around him. But we'll see what Ryan Poles thinks.
If you had to say Eberflus had to go, imagine if you had Jim Harbaugh as head coach running that Bears off.
I am praying for that day, Jackson. Trust me, Eberflus, like he's he's clueless. I don't know how else to say this. When you watch him in his post game interviews, his any press conference, I have no idea what happened in the interview process where Ryan Poles sat across from this guy and said, "This is the guy I want to lead my football team." He seems clueless. He seems very awkward. His in-game decisions haven't been very well. So it's one of those where I think that's just formality. He's gone. The Bears have never fired a head coach in the middle of the season, so that's that's the only reason he hasn't been gone yet. But to give you perspective, he won his first divisional football game of his coaching career last year, and he's a year and a half in. That's just it's embarrassing. So I'm sure he's gone. That's kind of one of the reasons I'm enjoying all this drama up north in Michigan, because I have dreams that we bring our quarterback from the early '90s.
Hometown hero.
Exactly, bring him back. Let him lead the Chicago Bears, and I trust him in his development over a guy like Justin Fields more than I do the clown show we currently have doing it.
Yeah, I mean, he was able to bring back the career of Alex Smith, and he did such a tremendous job with Kaepernick at the 49ers. Justin Fields, holy cow, an NFC title game appearance. Here you go, Chicago. Y'all need something good.
It's been a while, yeah. It's been a while for our franchise. We had fun in 2005, but ever since we let Lovey go for winning 9 games every single year, we've just been kind of struggling, trying to just get back to the playoffs. We've had a sprinkle of success here and there, but nothing worth noting. And so, yeah, I consider the Bears one of the premier franchises in the NFL. And so when the Bears are good, I just think the NFL in itself, it raises the level a little bit, makes the product more fun to watch when that Packers and Bears rivalry. It always means something to the fans, but when it actually means something in the standings, the NFL is better for it.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching a Pat McAfee, Aaron Rodgers episode one year, sometime around 2021. I think that was the wall where Aaron Rodgers was talking about we own Chicago. It was just like, holy cow, he is not going to make Bears fans happy. But when he left the Packers, I'm like, oh, Chicago may be owning it now.
Yeah, well, we were hoping. It was one of those things that like we were extremely happy, but we were also holding our breath to see what Jordan Love looked like, because from our perspective, it seemed like anytime we were celebrating when Brett Favre was gone. And what ends up happening? They bring in Aaron Rodgers, who's a better quarterback than Brett Favre, arguably one of the 5 best quarterbacks in NFL history. And so we were all just cautious, like, oh, don't tell me the Packers are going to do it again. Jordan Love is going to turn into an all-pro. Here we go. And now we got another 15 years of some young kid. But needless to say, I think he's been struggling a little bit. So he may not be the next Aaron Rodgers after all.
But I mean, never know with the Packers. I mean, I kind of feel like their quarterback room is kind of like the Steelers head coaching position or the Iowa head coaching position. If you're a quarterback in Green Bay, you're going to be there for the next 15 years or so.
Yeah, it's that and the Bulls front office management staff. It doesn't matter how inept you are for however many years. Jerry Reinsdorf hates firing people, and so he's just not going to. Yeah, and you've got a comfortable job for 15, 20 years. So I know what you mean.
Well, I mean, if Billy Donovan was to be fired any point this season, would he go back to college basketball coaching?
I mean, I think he absolutely could, but he's just not going to get fired. Even though we're asking for it, for some reason, Billy Donovan had one good season, and it was found out the following year that management had given him an extension. Why? I don't know. None of us were asking for it, but they had given Billy Donovan a secret extension. The Reinsdorfs, our owners, are notoriously cheap. They know they can count on the United Center being full almost every night. Our fan base is just one of the most rabid fan bases in the NBA. So I saw a Bulls beat reporter the other day talk about he interviewed one of the owners, and the owner said that they were very happy with Billy Donovan and in sync with him about what the changes that need to be made moving forward. So it's one of those where it's disappointing. Just basketball. Obviously, I grew up like as a kid in the '90s, so my first sports forming moments were with Jordan, Pippen, that Last Dance era. Like I
Bill
remember
Jackson.
exactly. I remember that first three-peat, and I remember that second three-peat. So I've always had a soft spot for the Bulls, but with the way things are panning out, they're just the thing is like the way I'll put it is they're the most uninteresting team in my life, in the sense that they're not bad enough to be bad, get the top overall pick in the draft, but they're not good enough to even remotely think that they have a chance in the playoffs. Like their goal essentially is try to sneak in for an 8 seed, and only to inevitably get swept by the Boston Celtics. So I find myself last couple of seasons just losing interest in the Bulls, like watching them less, kind of paying attention to other storylines in the NBA, and that's just so sad. It's one of those things where I don't know there's what I can do. It's just I don't think there's anything that we can do until the Reinsdorfs just decide to move on from the Bulls, and I just don't think that's ever going to happen.
Well, I hope it happens for yours. I want to see you guys get back to the Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Trust me. And the thing is, like, it's not just me being upset with an owner from a bias perspective, because if you bring on a White Sox fan, who the Reinsdorfs also own, they would be saying the same thing. It's just frustrating. He's very influential, even more so in baseball. With the commissioner and whatnot. So they're never going to push him out, but he's just one of those owners who is glad to be an owner. He got a very sweet deal in buying the Bulls. I think he bought them for like a couple $100 million in the early 1980s. And imagine that, a couple $100 million, and then Michael Jordan falls into your lap. And the White Sox are his first love, but he's again one of those where he hates to fire people, so he'll have incompetent people in charge where everybody in the world sees that they're incompetent, but he just doesn't want to fire them. So they're in charge for 3-4 years, and then all he barely fires them. He just kicks them upstairs. He'll give them a vice president job, and then just bring in a new guy, and the cycle starts all over again. And that's kind of where we're at. It's just the Bulls, they're just another franchise, which it's very disappointing because it's the Chicago Bulls. It's more fun when the Bulls are good.
Well, I hope things get better for the Bulls. But when the Cubs hired the manager from the Brewers, they did a little in division hire. What was your reaction when that happened? I mean, I'm not saying you'll see like 2016 World Series vibes, but seeing good playoff days again?
Shocked. I was shocked. I remember catching the tweet by one of the baseball insiders saying Craig Counsell is about to be announced as the manager of a baseball team that currently has a baseball team. Like I sent in my little group chat, oh man, it'd be so nice if this were the Cubs. Only for like 15 minutes later, it to be announced that he was coming to the Cubs, and that it was amazing to see. It's what we want the other front office staffs in Chicago to do. This is the kind of move that we want the Bulls to do. Be aggressive, go find the best guy to coach your team. They had a okay, learning up and coming baseball manager, David Ross. Like he has his issues, and I think eventually he'll be a pretty decent manager. But the Cubs basically saw an opportunity to bring the best manager in baseball in house, and they spent money to do it. And it's just what 8 some odd million when previously like the highest paid manager was like a 6 million or something like that. Like they went balls to the wall to get the best guy in house. And you know I don't know how closely you follow the hot stove rumors, but there's a lot of Shohei Otani rumors, like that the Cubs are one of the main teams going after him. We're trying to land another starting pitcher, a third baseman we still need. So it's nice to see a front office and an ownership group kind of being in sync and realizing, yeah, we've been rebuilding the last couple of years, but that rebuilding, as you kind of said, it almost feels like we're waiting for the John Lester signing that legitimize us. The Craig Counsell hiring was a lot like the what's his name, the manager that we won the World Series with. Oh my gosh, how am
Joe
I forget?
Madden.
Yeah, the Madden hire. It kind of came out of nowhere. Madden was a hire, the manager of the Rays, and then his GM, I think at the time, got the job with the Dodgers, which gave Madden an out clause, so he could leave his post as on the Rays, leave his contract. And all of a sudden, the Cubs came in, fired Rick Renteria almost immediately, brought in Madden, and what that did is it showed you that the franchise was serious about winning, that they were going to go ahead and try to win. And then John Lester signing, who was an ace with Boston, I believe Boston at the time, kind of legitimized us to other free agents. Like, hey, you're not signing on here to lose 90 games. No, they're going for it, and you're going to play in Wrigley Field. You're going to play in a landmark ballpark. You're going to have day games. A lot of people are going to be talking about you, and you're going to have a nationwide fan base. And so the Cubs are one of the Cubs, and I'd argue maybe the Blackhawks are the two franchises in the city that have a very promising future.
Yeah, I mean, with Shohei Otani, I hope he gets out of the Angels. Oh man, it's just I feel so horrible for him not getting a World Series title or even getting a playoff win.
It's the playoffs. Yeah, they have arguably two of the best players of our generation on the same team, and they haven't gone to the playoffs. Like it's amazing between Trout and Otani. Otani, what he's doing as a hitter and pitcher, like this could be by the time his career is done, he could be like mentioned as one of the best baseball players of all time. Um, yeah, I don't think there's any chance he goes back. I think the writing is on the wall at this point. I think the Angels made a huge mistake not trading him at the deadline and restocking that farm system, because a lot of teams would have given up a lot of good assets to get a player like that in house. So at least you kind of have first dibs on starting communication on a possible extension or whatever it takes. So I'm hoping the Cubs continue to be aggressive on that front. I know we're trying, but what's that dollar figure eventually going to be? Because the Dodgers and the Yankees, those are two teams that are not going to be outbid.
True. I mean, I would love to see him go to the Braves. I mean, it would be kind of like the MLB equivalent of Kevin Durant going to the Warriors. But I know that probably wouldn't happen. But like the Dodgers, I'm going to tell you right now, you hate not winning at all. You're going to hate being at the Dodgers because they always underachieve at the.
Yeah, but at least they're winning 90, 95, 100 games every year, getting to the postseason. Like baseball, sometimes that's all you need to do in baseball. Like it's of all the sports, the most that just it's you talk about like I don't luck is not the answer, but um, I forget the word that I'm thinking about, but it's just more of a matter of just try to get to the playoffs and then hope things go your way.
Well, I mean, I will say, things definitely went the way of the Texas Rangers for sure.
Yeah, and that's a very cool story with their manager and everything. It's
Bruce Bo.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, he's done an amazing job at what 4 stops now, and it's just that's what we want the Cubs to be able to do. Like just let's win 90, 95 games. We're very clearly the biggest market in the NL Central. The Cardinals have a history of being one of the most well-run organizations in all of baseball, winning 90 games every single year. But, it's time to use our muscle. We're in Chicago. We have our own TV network. We sell out every game in historic Wrigley Field. Let's use our advantages. Let's use that money and really like we should be in contention for our division every single year. No excuses.
I got a feeling things are heading in the right direction for the Chicago Cubs, and be great. I mean, they'll most certainly do well against the Braves because Braves tend to do all right regular season, but they fall apart in the postseason. You can get lucky there, especially if you go against the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hold them slightly higher than you do. I like, right now I think the goal is to become the Dodgers or the Braves. The Braves farm system, when I took a look, like I was completely envious of that. Like they're just stocked all the way around. When we play, every time we played them, it seemed like every like even their eighth, ninth batter would come up. He'd be batting 260 with 24 home runs, and there was just no break in their lineup for a pitcher to be like, okay, let me relax a little bit. No, they're loaded from their entire lineup's loaded. They're young. They got a bunch of young players still coming up. It's the Braves are one of those organizations where I'd love for the Cubs to kind of aspire to be in the next few years.
Oh man, that'd be cool. Braves, Cubs, and especially if it's on TBS or Fox.
That would break a lot of TV records too. I think TV rating records because those are two national fan bases. The Cubs obviously grew their fan base on WGN, where everyone in the country could watch, and the Braves very similar when they had all their games on TBS. So I think there's a lot of people who'd be tuning into that series.
I know we will, that's for sure. So, yeah, we talked about how you got a pretty cool backstory, a pretty big one. Like tell the audience a little bit about your backstory, man.
Yeah, sure. I'll try not to be too long-winded about it, but I've worked in marketing most of my professional life. I worked for pretty much all the top marketing agencies you can name. Some of my clients have been Chevy, Ford, DirecTV, AT&T, a lot of the companies that everybody is well aware of. I decided to branch off and kind of do my own thing for a little while. So I was marketing independently for smaller businesses, and even late at night while I'm doing my own work, I'm on YouTube and I'm watching the YouTube market grow. So I had to study the YouTube market just because obviously my clients were asking about it. And it's actually funny. This is where one of our mutual contacts, Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, he comes into the picture because I'd be watching on TV, and there's this gentleman talking about college football, and I've seen how many views he was getting, how he was doing, and he was kind enough to actually spend a couple hours worth of phone calls with me as we were kind of discussing things back and forth, me helping his channel and me talking about potentially going down the path of opening my own Illinois channel. Then on February of this, oh no, so what happened is, let me backtrack a little bit. I had my own agency for a little while, and then I was contacted by a prominent pharmacy company to head their marketing during COVID, basically their internal message. I guess that's the way to talk, like how to discuss it with employees, the signage in their stores, this and that. So that required all my time. So I had to basically tell my clients from my agency that, okay, this is not going to work out anymore, or I'm going to have to take a little break, so I could focus on working with this other company. I did that for a while, and then once that ended, COVID hit, and we were in the middle of COVID. Let's put it that way. So instead of me going back to my agency, some of the clients had already moved on to in a different direction. I had a conversation with my wife, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to kind of take it easy for a little bit. In February of this year, it was a very snowy day in Chicago, and I was, putting my 2-year-old son in a car seat on the side of a road on the shoulder, and a car had slid and hit me straight on to the point where I had like 13 staples up here. I'm very lucky you can't really see it. I've got 12 or 13 stitches here, which for the most part have healed. I had a chunk of my skin, 12 stitches on the side of my hip. I had a fracture on my lower spine, lumbar 5 or 11, one of those down there. And I've had a major concussion. And so, a lot of things happened to me that night, but I was also very blessed and very lucky that I went home that night, at 4 in the morning. To put it into perspective, since my accident on February 24th, 2 other people have gotten hit at that same exact spot. And the 2 people who got hit, they both passed. They didn't survive. And so here I am, talking relatively healthy. But to kind of fast forward, one of the toughest things I was dealing with was the concussion. My speech was a little off. I'd be stuttering here and there, kind of pausing, not being able to relay the thought that was in my head. And my doctor was one of the best doctors when it comes to concussions. You can find her on doing TED Talks and whatnot. So I was very privileged to be able to have a sit-down conversation with her. And she basically said that everything that you know about concussions is not true. They want you to stay away from light. They want you to relax, not look at your phone, not look at your screen. None of that is true. What you need to do is you need to challenge your brain. You need to go out and, have conversations with people, just talk, challenge, stimulate your brain. That'll get the different neutrons working. So I don't know if you call it a coincidence or what, but maybe a couple months after that conversation happened, I was sought out by Big Banter Sports, Brant in particular, who messaged me, and he's like, "Hey, we see you tweeting about Illinois sports. Is this something you'd be interested in doing?" And I just kind of, for me, it was just thinking back to long conversations I had with like Mark, just a year or two previous, talking about opening up my own Illinois channel. I thought, hey, this is the perfect opportunity. My doctor literally says this is the sort of thing I should do. So I jumped on the opportunity. I knew I couldn't do it solo just because it's hard for me to long form talk more than a half hour just by myself, just because the concussion does tend to kick in, which is the concussion is supposed to last about a year or so. So, technically I'm still in the middle of it. So I was very lucky. I reached out to a guy who I'd been listening to down in Champaign. He was like the producer for a very popular radio show down there. And now he was just kind of tweeting. So I was like, hey, his name's Austin Berkland, who's my co-host now. I was like, hey, would you be interested? He said, yes. We had a couple conversations. And now, I'm very lucky. He's very good at what he does. And, we're about to record our 30th episode tonight. And it's one of those things where it was such a unfortunate accident that happened back in February, but I'm very grateful towards Mark Rogers, to seeing me watching his career grow, like on YouTube, seeing him, as I casually check in, it's another couple thousand subscribers every time I look. I feel like I think he's up to the mid 40s, and his support early. And now, the support I've gotten since the accident. And, obviously Illinois is not exactly a rabid fan base. So we're never going to have the numbers that the Ohio State shows do or the Nebraska shows do. But we've carved a pretty good niche for ourselves. And, it's given me the confidence to kind of look at other shows that I'm going to be starting up soon. One being a Big Ten show that I'm looking at, and one just calling it the Sonny Verma Show, where every night after a Bulls game or a Blackhawks game or a Bears game, I'm just going to get on for a half hour, 45 minutes, and just kind of talk about the game that we just saw, just because, there's a market for that. I've seen other people do that with, Milwaukee teams, and I haven't seen it as much for Chicago. So it's going to be something I'm going to try to do.
Sonny Verma Show. It's going to be awesome. A little while ago, you talked about challenging your brain. Do you do like a Sudoku, or do like a lot of math?
I was playing a lot of chess. I used to play a lot of chess when I was a little kid, And so for me, what I did was every night I downloaded chess.com app. And in order for me to go to sleep, because that's another thing, when you have a concussion, it's very hard to go to bed. I would play chess for 2.5 hours every single night, to kind of challenge my brain. And that's kind of what I was doing outside, just research for the Illini podcast. So yeah, I mean, I was looking everywhere just to try to get mentally stimulated, just because I needed to, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
It's pretty awesome. Get your brain thinking. Think not about the next move you're gonna make. It's usually about the 5 moves ahead.
Exactly, it's a long game, especially if you're playing it right. I mean, you've got to be thinking 5, 10 moves ahead, and it's not a instant gratification by any sort of measure. So it worked out for me. I played a lot when I was a little kid. I just stopped playing for like 20 years, but now that everything's so easy, you can play on an iPad. That's exactly what I did. That's kind of what I had been doing, a hobby I'd picked up to kind of help get things moving around again.
Go. It's always good to play games that challenge your brain on your phone. Making sure I'm doing that. Thinking of math and this, that, and the other.
I'm surprised you have any free time. It seems like every time I look at my Twitter timeline, you've got one show here and another show there, and I turn on YouTube and there you are. You're all over the feed. I love it. You're one of the hardest working guys out there.
Well, I make sure to work as hard as much as possible, because I mean, that's the thing. It's people think that when you're your own boss, show your own company, some people think I'm the boss. I can do whatever I want. But when you have that mentality, it doesn't end well. I've seen it on like some of these little kitchen nightmares with Gordon Ramsay, where you see some of these bosses, especially that Amy's Baking Company, where they thought I can do whatever I want. The people that have that mentality doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is not easy, but the only way to ultimately succeed in this is just to keep grinding away, getting content out there, getting your name out there, and that's why, I think you have a really, really bright future here.
So I'm making sure I work as hard as much as possible and work every chance I get. You got a bright future as well, man. I mean, I look forward to seeing more of a line cast. I have a little backstory myself on Mark Rogers when I first met him. He was on the first playoff ranking, 2022,
Mhm.
last season. And, we're talking about whether TCU is going to be getting the once over like they did 2024. He's like, "Oh, are you a TCU fan?" No, actually, I'm an Alabama fan. "Oh, you're an Alabama fan. Nice."
Mhm.
He was just like, "Holy cow, you're an Alabama fan talking about TCU."
Yeah, no, you're definitely one of the more knowledgeable college football fans. I know a pretty good amount for Illinois and a decent amount for Big Ten, but when it comes to the national scene, I only have so much free time. I got two young kids who I'm chasing after, throughout the day. So, like, my knowledge is limited to, like, I got to focus and know everything about a smaller niche as opposed to know a lot about like the whole national perspective right now.
Because I mean, when I was a little boy, I even like watched Thursday night games on ESPN on school nights, like trying to watch it behind my parents. It's like, gosh, it's time for bed. It's like this game's got to be over first, then I can go to bed.
Yeah, I still have that. I gamble more than I care to mention. So, like, I definitely still watch games all day long, no matter how small the school is. But when it comes to like in depth talking about depth charts and this move or that move, I try to keep my focus with Illinois and Big Ten football.
That's for sure. I mean, it's always a good idea to work on when you do something or you're working on a job or working on something. Always make sure it's something you love doing. Heard.
Exactly right. And I'm proof positive that it's I was very good at what I was doing for a very long time, working for a very prominent team in marketing, and I just it wasn't for me. Like eventually, I wanted to kind of break off and do my own thing, and I was doing a very credible job independently as well, enough so that I was sought out for my services by a pretty prominent pharmacy company that we all know, and now I'm just kind of on the next stage of my life, and seeing where this goes, while I'm also trying to raise two kids, and I'm very lucky to have a partner that I do, because my wife is very understanding, and she's very always pushing forward and believing in me, and that kind of makes me this easier for me moving forward too, knowing that I have that support.
Well, I will say that is awesome that you got a loving and supporting wife, and you got two wonderful little kids. That is awesome. I
Um,
hope to get as lucky as you are one of these days, man.
I'm living the American dream. There's nothing I can complain about. That's why it's I feel like I have to tell the story because it's a big part of my story, the story about the accident. But I like to tell the story and just kind of move on, because I don't need any sympathy or empathy, for what I had gone through. Because again, here I am talking normal, everything's fine. For the most part, I'm 90% of what I was the day before the accident. There's a lot of people out there in a lot worse situations than me, and I'm never taking any of this for granted. Like you said, I've got a partner who's fully supportive. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old son. I'm a very lucky guy.
I'm glad you and your family are doing awesome. I will say, wrap this show up, and you can check out Sonny on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Threads. You can also check him out on BigBanterSports.com. But you can also check out the Illinicast right here on YouTube. Let's get that show over to 1,000 subs, man. You can check out Illinicast on Twitter. You can check it out on Big Banter Sports. And you can also, like you said, check it out on Apple and Spotify, amongst all the other podcast platforms. Until next time, this is Jackson Johnson, the host of the Jacksonian. I'll see you later. But first, I must say, if you like content like this, like, comment, subscribe. We have just gotten past 250 subs. I am 247 subs away from getting to 500, and I'm also getting closer and closer to 1,000. So if everybody can help me get to 1,000 subs, it would be much appreciated. And again, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody watching, thank you so much for helping this channel grow. Thank you for helping it get past 250 subs. Much appreciated. Till next time, this is the Jacksonian. So long, everybody.